Hong Kong for the last generation.
On
You have a choice.
MadeInMotor.com, the Republican
I
candidate
did
for
not
governor.
have sexual relations with
I
her.
realize that this is something he isn't
We're not going to be able to solve our problems if we get distracted by sideshows and carnival barkers.
One Republican, one Democrat, and you discuss the issues that matter in today's local, state, national, and global politics. Hosted by Steve Hickson with co-hosts John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey. This is Backfire.
Good morning, Cleveland. Another edition of Backfire. John Stanberry, Franklin Chansey, and this morning Alan Goldberg's with us again this morning.
Good morning, Duval.
All right. And anyway, I was going to see what you might want to talk about this morning. I see that Mr. Rawls is raising Cain about the funding that they appropriated for Cleveland State. And now he's wanting to withdraw that again and not do it because it's like a loan for a building. He says, what's he talking about, John? Do you know?
Well, I don't think Dan supported it to begin with. I mean,
Well, he didn't, and they go on in the article said, here we go again.
Well, I mean, I think that's kind of how government works. He made a motion, he got a second, it was voted down, and we move on. You know, Dan didn't think it was appropriate. There were several commissioners that were concerned about it, but I think the overwhelming thing was it was an opportunity to secure funding from the state for Cleveland State, which the community college system has been woefully neglected over the past really couple of decades. So, but Dan opposed it, and he said
he'd done some more investigation, and it's like making a loan for a building over there. He said, who would make a loan for a building you wouldn't own? That was his comment.
Well, that was a comment early on, was that it's not our property, it's not the county's property, so why is the county putting money into it?
And he also went on to say our jail needs a lot more work.
It probably does.
Yeah, and he thought that money would be better served there.
Well, the money's an investment in education in our community. Education in our community creates economic growth in our community. You could make that argument about almost every.
You'd rather spend it on education as jails?
Yeah, but
personally, yes.
Look, I support it, fully supported giving the money to them, so I'll lay that out first. But let me kind of take the devil's advocate position here. Lee College or Lee University is a wonderful supporter of the community. Would you support the county commission giving $250,000 to Lee? Because you can make the same arguments that it's an investment in education. Would that be acceptable?
Well, it depends on what they was needing it for.
Well, first of all, we do own Cleveland State Community College.
But the county doesn't.
We as citizens.
You're right.
And that's the argument.
Right, but Dan's correct in saying it's not county property. And he has a fiduciary responsibility to the county with the money. And I'm not saying I agree with it, but if Lee asked for it, you could make the same arguments that it'd be good to do.
I'm not arguing about him whether he has a fiduciary responsibility. All the commissioners to have that.
Well, if he looks at that and says, look, the county jail needs all this work, we don't have unlimited resources.
There's no question that every expenditure they make is an allocation of scarce resources, and you have to decide where the best place to put them is.
I mean, they probably didn't spend much time on it at the meeting, but would you go along and say that it was a total waste of time to do this?
No, I supported giving them the money.
Okay, but for Dan to raise Cain after it was already voted for, trying to stop it again, it's already voted for, he brings it up and tries to make some kind of...
Yeah, but see, I look at that and go, he made a motion, he got a second, they took a vote, that's the end of it. That's the way our democracy works.
Wouldn't you imagine how...
What about the last time they voted on it? Was that supposed to have been the end of it?
Well, it probably was, but as a commissioner, you can do whatever you want to do.
Well, it's kind of like this Russian investigation. At some point in time, you just got to go on.
Well, we do have a new standard in prisons now down. If you take a look at Guantanamo, we've got to keep our baseline here. You don't want the prisoners to be uncomfortable.
Well, actually, I'm sitting here looking at U.S. inmates staged nationwide prison labor strike over modern slavery.
Yep. It's called jail.
Yeah. 19 days they're going to have 19 days of peaceful protest are planned across the nation, organized largely by prisoners themselves. Do you think prisoners in jail could organize this?
Well,
sure. Sure.
Sure they can.
No, they have outside help. You know that. Here's my deal about it. I hope they go on a hunger strike. I'm a little harsh on that.
Well, they're saying
if you don't want to eat, fine. I hope you starve.
They're saying the first part of the prison is likely to be hit. It will be the kitchens, where the stoves will remain unlit, ready meals unheated, and thousands of breakfasts uncooked.
Well, good for them. When they're starving, they'll change their mind.
And from the impact, will fan out. The laundry will be left unwashed, prison corners unmopped, and the lawns on the external grounds, fence and barbed wire will go uncut.
God forbid.
I don't have a problem in the world with that. The problem for me will be if the people in charge bring people in to do all of that. I'd just say, look, this is your world. You live in it. If this is what you want to do to it, have at it. And when you're tired and hungry and upset about sleeping on dirty sheets and wearing dirty clothes, then you'll start the laundry back up and you'll start the kitchen back up. Until then, good luck.
Now they'll get violent then, John. They get violent.
Well,
start
then we'll water
up.
hose them. Then you do whatever you have to do to put the violence
And then
down.
we got to go pay to build it all back.
Is this an extension of the resist movement?
Probably. There's more movements in this country right now. It's amazing. A Colorado baker sues again after refusing to make a cake for transgender woman. What is going on in this world?
Well, actually, that one, I was wondering what Franklin thought about that. That actually happened 2 weeks after the Supreme Court pretty roundly, I think it was a 7-2 vote. This wasn't a conservative-liberal split. Slapped the Civil Rights Commission in Colorado down. This is clearly a setup. They came in and asked if he would bake a cake of Satan using a sex toy with a real sex toy embedded in the cake. They asked if he would make an upside-down cross with Satan's head on top of it. And then one of the people that came in and asked that used the same name as the lawyer who called and asked if they'd do the transgender cake, which is what this case is actually based on. So this was purely fishing against this particular baker. The Civil Rights Commission apparently couldn't read the Supreme Court opinion. Franklin, what do you think about that?
Well, it's the first time I've heard about this. So, first of all, I understood originally that his suit he was bringing had to do with the fact that he simply thought that the Human Rights Commission there was being retaliatory against him, which is a different issue and which was, I think, addressed in the Supreme Court opinion.
Well, they said they were retaliatory and that they treated him differently than they treated other people with similar cases.
And that may be a sound basis for his lawsuit. I don't know all the facts yet, but that may, in fact, be true. That is what the Supreme Court actually ruled in that decision.
Well, I can tell you they did. They had multiple cake shops where people came in and asked them to do cakes. I know, but I'm going to
things we do here, you know.
They asked them to do cakes with scripture verses on them that oppose homosexuality, and that same commission completely upheld their right to refuse. Mm-hmm. So they clearly discriminated against him.
And that may be a completely valid.
And they're doing it again. Well, my point is, how do you feel about them reading a Supreme Court case that was a 7-2 vote and that clearly told them what they did was wrong, 2 weeks later turning around and doing exactly the same thing?
Well, if I read the story you just handed me correctly, they haven't done anything yet. They ordered him to go to mediation. That's not exactly the same thing as ordering him to do something.
What do you think he's being harassed?
It's possible.
What do you mean possible?
Well, I'm not there getting all the facts, but from the article that you just handed me, that's certainly a possible interpretation.
Aubrey Alanis, the director of the Colorado Civil Rights Division, found on June 28th, quote, probable cause to believe that Phillips violated Scardina's civil rights when he refused Scardina's bad faith request to design a cake celebrating his transition. So that's probable cause, Franklin. They've said that he's wrong again.
How much is this guy's cakes worth? I mean, he's got to be a popular baker now.
Well, look, the guy doesn't do Halloween cakes. This is not singling anybody out. He doesn't do Halloween cakes. There are a lot of things he doesn't do which traditional Christian belief doesn't support.
And you really got to get down to it. When does this guy need the cake? if they're going to continue to do that.
And keep in mind, no one has said that the Masterpiece Cake Shop doesn't serve homosexuals, doesn't serve Satanists. He just won't do specific cakes celebrating things that he's opposed to. But he doesn't refuse to service those people in general. But I think this is a perfect example of on a different kind of leg, Trump derangement syndrome. The people in the Colorado Civil Rights Commission are raving liberals who, like we talk about,
raving.
They're not
liberals. They're raving
not
liberals.
That you disagree. It's raving. That you're stupid and you're wrong. And so even a Supreme Court ruling, they don't feel obligated to abide by it. I'm sure they don't feel obligated to abide by, I don't know, a presidential election where someone actually wins and someone loses. That's what we're dealing with in the country right now with the left. They don't accept the reality because they're so much better than us, they don't have to.
Well, they've already said they're going to change the reality.
Well, they're doing it. It's a threat to our liberty as we go on. They've weaponized government.
They've weaponized
Yes,
government.
you all have weaponized.
Really?
Obama started it.
Really?
You all have weaponized government. You are doing stuff.
You forgot all about Ken Starr, right?
No, I haven't.
No, yeah,
and
actually,
you
you have
said you were
forgotten about
opposed to that. Maybe you ought to read.
And I listen to you. You're making the exact same argument the Democrats made now with a straight face after you said it was nonsense.
No,
Which is it?
Here's what I'm talking about, Franklin. When you start raiding defense lawyers' homes, when you start locking people up who haven't been convicted of a crime, when you start taking witnesses who committed the exact same crime and giving them a pass on it so they'll testify against someone else, also you can get them in a bind. Now, you're a civil rights defense attorney, Franklin. If what happened to Paul Manafort with all the people they got to testify against him, people that committed the same crimes that they gave them a pass on, if that happened to an illegal immigrant that we picked up on I-75 in the back of a truck and you were defending them, you'd be having a coronary right now over
Well, it's not likely we would be investing all those resources in finding an illegal immigrant who had millions and millions and millions of
and
dollars.
That makes it worse. What you just admitted, because it's Trump,
we probably would have deported that one.
You're right, but that's the point, isn't it?
No, it's not the point, John.
You just admitted that they put extra
John.
resources, extra attention because it's Trump.
You know why? You know why white-collar criminals like him frequently walk? Because they're able to bring all the resources that Paul Manafort could bring into their defense. That's exactly
Well, let's see. Wait,
exactly true.
We've got 27 lawyers assigned to this that are making $1,000 an hour, and they've been working on this.
They're making $1,000 an hour.
That's their rate, $1,000 an hour. That's what they're making rate-wise, $1,000 an hour. There's 27 of them.
They're government employees.
There's 27. They are contracted from law firms around the country to work with him as a special investigator at $1,000 an hour. And they've been working on this thing for about, how long?
It's been over a year.
A fourth of the Whitewater investigation.
A year and a half?
A fourth.
Well, wait a minute.
A fourth.
Do you think that the taxpayers want to pay this kind of price for this type of investigation?
The polling says the taxpayers want it done.
I think the taxpayers want the truth.
The polling says the taxpayers want it done. The polling on this indicates overwhelmingly the public wants it done.
That's how we should make our decisions in the criminal justice system.
What did Papadopoulos lie about that kind of started all this?
I don't know. I haven't seen his statement yet.
I'll tell you what. You want to know
what
he
you haven't seen his statement either.
Actually,
you haven't. You're pulling this out of some right-wing pundit's rear end and saying you know it to be true, and the fact is you don't know it at all.
What this all boils down to, though, when you really take a look at the whole picture, is it started out where we really didn't have a crime we were going after.
There's not a crime. There's never been a crime committed to have this investigation.
Actually, I do.
Collusion is not a crime.
Yesterday there was.
Collusion is not a crime.
Nothing to do with Russia.
We don't know where that.
To do with
yesterday.
No, that did not have anything to do with Russian
Cohen's
collusion.
lawyer said that Cohen has information about that and will be sharing it.
You mean the lawyer that the FBI raided his home in a nighttime raid and took away actual client material? And you as an attorney are okay with that?
It depends, John, on whether he's doing legal work at that time.
I'm going to recommend that the sheriff start doing that to your clients, and let's see how long you
go right
let
ahead,
that stand.
John. You make that recommendation.
Well, let me read you something, because you're wrong about that. I do have actual information from their team. The Mueller team.
Whose team?
Mueller.
Mueller's team hasn't given any public statement.
If you'll stop talking, I'll read it to you. I'll read it to you.
Let's hear it, John.
Let's hear it, John. Mueller's team has filed a sentencing memorandum in Papadopoulos' case.
That's right.
So this is Mueller's team sentencing memorandum.
Yeah.
This is what he lied about. When he was asked about his meeting, he told them that Mifsud, however you say his name, was a nothing. And it turns out that he was actually a bigwig. That's his first lie that he's going to go to prison over. Mm-hmm. Simply saying, oh, he was a big nothing. The second lie is he said that he wasn't even on the Trump team yet. Mm-hmm. He met the guy in April. He apparently officially went on the Trump team in March. So he was wrong when he said, oh, I wasn't even on the Trump team. So those two little offhand comments are the lies that this guy is now being threatened with prison time over. I think most citizens, Franklin, would look at that and think, that's not much to charge you with a federal crime over.
I'll tell you what that means. It means you haven't dealt with the FBI over your career.
Well, you know what?
Because guess what? They take lying seriously. They always have.
Franklin,
this is not a
would
new
consider
thing.
Both of those things basically an offhand statement by a normal citizen who doesn't understand the legalities of legal
The same
speech.
citizen who was bragging to diplomats over in Europe about his connections.
Because he's a little man who was trying to inflate himself.
Now, let's take a look at Papadopoulos, because Stephen Halper actually went and approached him with phony emails so that he would pass that information along
and as
to the campaign.
Now finding out, he was actually already in the employ of the FBI and the CIA. So that basically, what do you call that, Franklin? I think you call that a setup, don't you?
No.
Did anybody in the FBI lie about anything?
Absolutely, they've lied.
Okay.
And they've lost their jobs, but apparently taking their security clearance away from them when they've been fired for lying is a bad thing.
What do you think about the security clearance? Let's talk about it.
I think Brennan had it coming. The Washington Post wanted him fired a year or so ago. Every liberal in the country has hated him until he started criticizing Trump.
Conservatives in the intelligence community are all up in arms against what you just said, John.
I'll tell you why they're up in arms, Franklin, because they make money on security clearances. Mm-hmm. They have a vested interest. Their careers, when they leave, you know what's funny? You're all against the revolving door of the lobbyists. This is a revolving door as well. Mm-hmm. They make money off those security clearances. So absolutely. And those same people who are upset about the security clearance are also saying that Brennan is a loudmouth who's hurt the intelligence community with the things he's been saying.
Well, whether he's a loudmouth or not, it doesn't change the fact that it's probably an illegal removal of that security.
Well, it's
not a right.
What they really should have done was just denied access. That would solve the whole problem.
See, that's the myth here. They don't get a briefing every day. All right? The fact that you retained a security clearance does not give you access to information.
What does it give you? What does it give you?
It gives the government the right.
I'm glad you said that. You're right. You know what it means?
To ask for your insight and your opinion.
You're right.
That's what it means. It also means if you get hauled in front of Congress to talk, you're allowed to review the materials you're talking about.
Let me give you, in normal speak, what you just said. What he said, folks, is it allows people inside the deep state to leak stuff to him, and it's not a crime.
John,
as long as he has a security clearance, it's not a crime.
Helicopter show up and haul you away.
Is that right?
They probably will.
To a secure facility somewhere.
Right.
You mean like what they did to Manafort?
Is what he said correct? If somebody inside leaks information to him and he leaks it, it's not a crime?
That's not true at all.
Franklin, because he has a security clearance, someone inside the department can talk to him about things, and it's not a crime. Now that he doesn't have a security clearance,
he leaks it, however, it would be a crime.
Have a security.
He leaks it, it would be a crime.
Now that he doesn't have a security clearance, they can't talk to him.
That's right.
That's what this is about. If they talk to him, they've committed a crime. That's all this is about. He lost his monetary value to MSNBC when he lost his security clearance.
And let's do a segue here and take it over to Clinton, because how many folks did Clinton allow to see highly confidential, top secret information, especially to folks who set up a private server at her house.
Well, we know that foreign governments access that.
They had that. What about UMA, and what about good old Wiener, the guy that
UMA had a clearance.
That these confidential,
yes, but
all
her
these
husband
confidential
didn't.
emails
That she stored it on his computer.
It appeared on his private computer. Why would he have access to it? And then there's the Pakistani that worked for UMA, who's been allowed to just leave and head over to Pakistan. What's happened with him?
And what exactly is the point of that, Alan? What are you saying?
I'm saying that none of them had security to
What
read
does it
these
have to
confidential
do
emails.
with whether or not this was the appropriate step to take or not?
With Brennan?
Yeah.
Well, Franklin, I don't know. Did you have a problem when he lied to Congress about spying on the Senate Intel Committee?
Don't know that he did that.
He did. He absolutely. Dianne Feinstein actually said he did. Franklin, look it up. Do your search and look it
I'll
up.
answer that,
The
Franklin,
CIA was
because
actually accessing the Senate Intelligence Committee staffers' computers. He went before the Senate Intelligence Community. He testified under oath that it wasn't happening. We then found out it was. Dianne Feinstein actually brought that up herself. Democrat, liberal from California.
Exactly.
Were you okay when he lied about?
Who, by the way, you quote in here all the time, so you must really admire. That's all I can figure.
She does.
Because this
have her
about the 100th time
When
I've
she
heard you
tells the
quote
truth,
this.
I do.
Apparently, she tells it a lot, and you don't like it.
Franklin,
But on the other
were
side, on the other side of the coin, let's take a look at it. What did he need a security clearance for? What is he doing that it was required? The only thing I've ever heard is that the current people in office might need to pick his brain
Actually, they do
about
all the time.
Have
Not him, every
I don't think
CIA.
they've done it with Brennan.
Yeah, they have. Of course they have.
Hey, let me ask you
course
something.
they have.
Let me ask you something. Do you think John Brennan knew who had made the dossier, or know the history of the dossier? Do you think he was familiar with that information?
At some point, for sure.
So, do you think he lied about not knowing about it,
Depends on when he was
or
being
where it
asked
was
about
created? What's his title? What was his title? The head of
It was
The John Brennan
CIA?
last time I heard.
Well, I mean, he wouldn't know anything about the dossier.
Well, the dossier didn't originally come to the CIA, so I don't know exactly
Franklin,
when he found out.
Let me ask you a question. If you work in a big law firm and you work there 10 years and then you get fired, or even if you just quit, do you retain the ability to look at that law firm's records?
No, and neither does John.
Would a
Neither does
doctor-
John Brennan.
Would a doctor?
John Brennan doesn't have that either.
So a lawyer in that firm would.
But a lawyer
be
in
okay
but a lawyer in that
to tell
firm
him.
but a lawyer in that firm could call him and say, "Hey, John, I want to talk to you about this case that was going on back then, and I want to ask your
No,
opinion
new
about
cases.
it." That's okay.
New cases,
Well, they
Franklin.
do that too. We
But
do it all
see,
the
they
time.
can always reinstate his privileges. He doesn't have to. He doesn't have to keep
John
them.
Brennan made a decision to break with tradition.
John Brennan got punished
No,
for
John
criticizing
Brennan
Trump.
brought this
The
on himself.
thin-skinned little
James
baby
Clapper actually
we've
said
elected
that.
as president.
James
So
Clapper
what?
actually said that.
He's entitled to his
James
opinion
Clapper
too.
defended him.
The
for,
fact is, we have a thin-skinned little baby we elected
no, the
president
fact is, you
who can't
people can't
stand
understand that he was
criticism.
elected
He
president.
can't
and
stand
you won't
being
accept it.
criticized.
Can John
You're willing
Brennan?
to
Can John
destroy the
Brennan?
country over
Can
it.
John Brennan sue anybody over his security clearance?
Actually, he can't sue anybody, but he can sue the government over it.
It's
because there's actually
a
administrative
privilege.
law.
It's not a
Actually,
right.
Trump's hoping
It is
he
not
does
a
sue,
right.
because when he gets sued,
He
then
opens
can
up
be
everything.
deposed. And when he's deposed, he can be deposed on everything. Like the fact that he lied about spying on U.S. citizens. Were you okay with that? That was a lie under oath to Congress,
As
Franklin.
Trump says, bring on the suit, Mr. Brennan, bring it on.
Oh, let's go down the list here, since we're on thin-skinned.
But what Brennan's doing is he's using innuendo as fact, and nobody can prove it because it's held under wraps. You can't go in and look unless you have clearance. So he's saying, "Oh, but I know that this is the truth." But who knows if it is, because you can't go look at the security.
It's a gravy train for him, and that's what he's upset about. And that's what all these other people are upset
Most
about.
of these
They
guys-
make
By the
money
way,
off
guys,
of this
I
when they
gotta
leave
say,
office.
this is
Some of these
beautiful.
guys want to keep that
This
so
is
they can
beautiful.
go back and charge the government more money to as a researcher. or something.
Anything but talk about the fact that the president was an unindicted co-conspirator in a felony yesterday.
Wait a minute, what'd you just say? He was an unindicted
Co-conspirator. The
co-conspirator.
last person we said that about as a president was
What?
Richard Nixon.
Wait a minute, Frank.
Which is not
You're talking
fair.
about the Manafort thing?
No, the Cohen thing.
we don't know what Cohen's saying. Cohen,
Yeah, we do. He had to go in front of a judge yesterday and put in his own
He's
words
not
what
been
he had
tried.
done.
He has
Oh,
not
you're
been
talking about-
tried and
that's
proven
not, actually,
guilty.
It's not a crime.
Yes,
Franklin.
it is. He
It's
just
not a
pled
crime.
guilty to
It's
it.
it's a violation of election
He
finance
pled
laws.
guilty to
It's
a
a
felony
misdemeanor.
yesterday for it. What do you mean it's not a crime?
Let's ask the fact: did Obama ever violate any?
Yes, he actually
any,
did. And you know what he
campaign
got?
laws?
He got what almost everybody
A
got. So he gets when they do
$300,000
that.
fine.
He got a fine and he
Yeah.
gave the money
Yes,
back.
John, and
That's
the
it.
fact- And the
He
fact
got a
of that
fine
is
and he
the
paid the money
president
back.
himself personally directed a payment like that.
Franklin,
Really?
this has happened
His
over and
campaign had
over
to
and
pay it.
over again,
But-
and it never is taken
Fake
to this
news.
level. This is an
$140,000,
attack on our
correct?
democracy by your
That's-
side
that's-
because you're sore losers.
$140,000.
Say whatever you
payment.
want, John.
That would
the
be
wolves are at the door.
Well, let me tell you something. I hope you're right. You know why? Because you're going to get President Pence. And if your people don't like President
You know
Trump,
what, John?
you're going to be thrilled with President
Let's
Pence.
be real clear about this, John, so there will be no confusion
Yep.
for you later. No matter what the president's views are on policy, if he's a decent person, I'll be a lot happier. Unlike this amoral, narcissistic sex offender you guys have decided
Can
on.
I-
can I say something? Can I
Oh,
say
no, I'm
something?
not
Sex
done.
offender.
The
Can I
one
say
that
something?
encouraged
Is
you
this a
to
family
abandon
show?
every principle you ever had
Can I
in
please?
order to support.
Can I
this is
please
a
say
family
something?
show.
Can I please say
You
something?
have abandoned every principle you've ever had for 40 years as a loyal Republican.
Can I
in order
please?
to
Can I
support
please
this guy.
say something now? Can I just say something? I love Trump.
I know you do.
I think he's the best president we've ever had. I'm rated him higher than Reagan right now. He's the only real American we got left in Washington.
Oh, well, you know what then? Then you ought to vote to throw out every incumbent then, shouldn't you?
I tell you what, I'm about ready to start over up there in
If you believe
Washington.
in the swamp, you have to vote for against every incumbent, don't you?
Hey, let me
But
tell
you're
you.
not going to do that because you're going to put party over your principles.
Well,
That's
wait-
what's going to happen.
no,
here.
actually-
So I should follow
We're
your
gonna-
party? Are you trying to say I should follow
Vote
your
for
party?
another Republican.
What is the
Throw
liberal-
every incumbent
what is the
out.
Democrat going to vote for this
Throw
year?
vote for the other
They're going to
Republican.
do away with ICE, and they're going to institute socialism.
What really and truly?
Let's
What
go
are you
down.
going to vote
Let's
for?
go down the list of all these whiny people here. Who said this? He's a con artist. Who said that? Oh, that was Marco Rubio. Who said if we nominate Trump, we will get destroyed and we will deserve
Wait a
it?
minute, Marco
Well,
Rubio,
that
is he the
great.
one with small hands?
Oh, wait, who said this? Trump is a delusional narcissist and an orange-faced windbag. Oh, that was
Wait a
Rand
minute,
Paul.
wait a minute, Franklin.
Oh, wait.
Who said
One more.
America
Who
was-
won the election?
He's
Hey,
a
Franklin.
pathological liar. He's
Franklin.
utterly
Hey,
amoral.
Franklin, who won the
Ted
election?
Cruz.
Who won the election, Franklin?
Wait a minute, Franklin. Who said
All right,
America
that's
was
the point.
really never
Franklin
great?
Once again, goes
Who
back
said
to before
America-
the election because he can't accept that they lost.
Who said
Plain and
America
simple.
was never
And by the
really
way,
great?
Franklin, while you're talking about principles, maybe you want to read Alan Dershowitz a little bit. Not a supporter of the president, but he says the ACLU and you good liberals have abandoned everything on attorney rights, on civil rights, on due process you've ever supported in your life. He said if this was if
That's what he
Manafort
said.
was a liberal Democrat, the ACLU would be all over what the government has been doing to him. But you're okay with it because it's against Trump.
Yeah,
Not to mention what they did with coin.
Amazing.
We haven't even talked about that.
Amazingly enough, how all these Republicans gang up on poor Donald.
You're arguing with Alan Dershowitz, not Republicans.
I'm asking how the Republican Party got to be so incompetent. That's what I want to know.
Well, I don't know, Franklin. It seems like we've won everything we've gone up.
All I know is,
call that
all I've
incompetent.
heard for 5 years is all these horrible things that the Democrats have done, and it's all going to be taken care of when we're in power.
Well,
Now
actually,
you're in
Franklin-
power, and none of the things that you said you were going to do have actually happened.
Well, I don't think that's
Oh,
right.
we're
We
gonna get
cut
to the
taxes,
bottom of all
Franklin,
this. We're gonna
and-
get to that.
and
We're gonna
millions
get
of
this
people have
conspiracy
gotten
out of the way.
bonuses. People's
They're
pay
going
has
to
gone
jail.
up. Their taxes have gone down. Unemployment is at record lows. Youth unemployment is now at the lowest it's been in history. Walmart recently said their quarterly sales numbers were the strongest mark in more than a decade. 48 out of 50 states and D.C. have taken action to reduce their utility bills because of the tax cut. They have ranged from $101 million in Maine to more than $3.2 billion in California going back to consumers. Black unemployment unemployment rate's at an all-time low. Hispanic unemployment is at an all-time low. Trump's numbers with blacks have actually doubled in the last 6 months.
How we doing with North Korea?
North Korea is sending our remains back, and we're
building more missiles.
We're talking about ending that, right? Franklin?
Is the country better off right now?
Then when?
Then when Obama was in office.
5 years ago?
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe.
Well, Trump's approval rating is over 50% in the latest Rasmussen poll. It is, Franklin.
It is, Franklin.
Okay. Well, you already know, John, that when you take all those polls and average them together, his approval rating is like 41%.
It's still above what Obama's was at this point in his presidency.
It's not.
I had that last week. It is. The real clear average is above Obama's average at the same point in his presidency.
Well, I think it's a given that America is doing better than it ever has been, because if you listen,
ever has been.
That's right.
Really?
If you take a look at what Cuomo said, America's never really been great.
Yeah. Is that the new Democratic
that's
slogan?
Andrew Cuomo, yeah.
What's that new slogan?
America never was that great.
America never
By the
was
way, a
that
new poll shows about 20% of Democrats agree with him that America never was that great.
Well, we got to take a break, and I want everybody to keep on trumping. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson. We'll be right back after this.
Hello, I'm Shelley Duvall.
And you're listening to WOOPLP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
After 135 years, Hardwick Clothes, America's oldest since 1880, has delivered on our commitment to produce the finest navy blazer in America. This limited edition blazer was announced as the style winner in Garden & Guns Made in the South Awards. Crafted in Cleveland, Tennessee, we use premium Italian wool from the Tale Barbarus, custom Bimberg lining, and signature gold buttons. It's available through the finest men's store or at hardwick.com.
Hello, my name is Andy Figglestaller with Ed Jacobs & Associates. We are an employee benefit and insurance broker in business for the past 20 years. The new healthcare law, also known as Obamacare, has finally arrived. The law is complex and the choices are confusing. You have questions, we have the answers. It is our passion to find cost-effective solutions for every client. The solutions will be different for every person or business. Let our knowledge, experience, and passion go to work for you. Contact us today and let us assist you through this process. Our phone number is 423-473-0202, or you can find us on the web at edjacobs.com.
If you need a little green, Lending Frog is making deals. He'll lend you cash on any kind of wheels. Borrow just a little, or you can borrow big. Lending Frog is a new financial gig. It's hip to hop into cash. LendingFrog.com is making a splash.
Another SOS, and you're stressing, and that's the time to check in and check into cash.
It's that time again. Are you more back to school or back to bills? When you need extra cash, text the word quote to 55670 for a free, no-obligation quote. Learn how much cash you can pre-qualify for. That's quote to 55670. Get pre-qualified today.
Your one-stop money shop, check into cash.
Dr. Christopher Chase, with Associates in Plastic Surgery, now offers his patients the convenience of a Cleveland office at 2350 North Ocoee Street. Dr. Chase specializes for the ladies in breast augmentation, including lifts, reconstructions, and reductions. Also, tummy tucks or mommy makeovers, and facial rejuvenation, including facelifts, eyelids, brows, nose, and he also offers Botox procedures. Check out Dr. Christopher Chase. He is certified by the American Board of Surgery, the American Board of Plastic Surgery. He's a member of the American Society of Plastic Surgeons and the American Society of Aesthetic Plastic Surgery. Check their website out at aprs.md. That's aprs.md. Call for your convenient appointment in Cleveland at 624-0021. 624-0021. 2350 North Ocoee. That's Dr. Christopher Chase.
You looking for something sweet? I know you are. Bring your little sweet self to the Village Bake Shop. Around since 1961, There ain't a baked good in the galaxy. The Village Bake Shop can't whip up for you. So when you're ready to treat your mouth to a taste you won't soon forget, get over to the Village Bake Shop in the Village Green Town Center. Or give them a call at 476-5179. You dig?
No dealers allowed.
Jackson Catnapper, family owned and operated in Cleveland since 1933, offering the best with over 70 styles of recliners, sofas, electronic lift chairs, full living room packages. Call Mike now at 961-7239 because Jackson Catnapper now offers sales to the public
every Saturday. That's right, every Saturday.
From 8 in the morning to 1 in the afternoon. Or call Mike at 961-7239. Or go see him
every Saturday
at 1911 King Edward Avenue, just across from the main plant. Jackson Catnapper, family owned and operated in Cleveland since 1933. 961-7239.
No dealers allowed.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson on Whoop FM. Call 423-614-5553 to join in on the conversation. Now, back to Backfire.
And we're live in the room. We've got a caller on. Go ahead, caller.
Hey, it's good morning. It's Edward, you know, and if it wasn't for listening to the whoop of the morning, I could sleep in 5 days a week.
All right.
Man, I just wake up. But now, I should have called, well, Dr. John and Dr. Franklin there, you know, I should have called in earlier because I didn't want y'all are underdressed, 3 of you are, because Franklin's going somewhere and doing something. I didn't want y'all to get him stirred up this morning, you know. But you did. Now, I might give Lee University some money if, like, you know, that they got Church Street closed for a block years ago. And then they went over to Parker Street and they put some humps in. And now they're putting them all in down there. You talk about a traffic, you know, we're throwing more traffic over on Ocoee. Now, if I own property on both sides of the street, can I put me a hump in the street out here?
If you got all your property people on every corner to okay it, you probably could.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Well, that's interesting. Well, I like listening to you all, know, but I like to hear you talk one at a time so I can understand you.
Well, you're going to have to turn your hearing aid down if you want to hear us one at a time.
My hearing aid, that's why I say, huh? I didn't get them. They were too expensive, man.
All right.
You know?
All right, Edward, any other questions?
Oh, any other questions? Well, yeah. Do you want to talk about how the Church of God preachers raised their retirement from their churches down at the assembly in Florida the other day?
Not really.
Hey, I worked at Bradley Memorial Hospital for 43 years. They never did ask me whether I would vote to raise their contributions to my retirement by 100%, you know. I'd have said yes, too, wouldn't you?
Sure.
Yeah, you know who else got their retirement raised?
Say that again.
You know who else got their retirement raised?
Yeah, the fellows well, 83% of the churches Church God has is less than 100 people, what they said in the assembly. But what the preachers did years ago, you didn't want to talk about this, but I'll tell you, years ago, the churches had to send 10% to state headquarters and 10% to general headquarters.
Most churches do have that same obligation.
Well, I was actually connecting. Someone else that got their pension raised was all the employees of Huntington Ingalls, the largest shipbuilder in the country, because of the Republican pass. Every Democrat voted against tax bill that President Trump passed. So they actually got a $500 bonus. They got $200 million added to their pension fund, and they've increased their capital outlays 20%, all because of a bill that not a single Democrat voted for.
Oh, well, let me tell you, but see, these preachers didn't like paying that much money to headquarters for the state, so they got it reduced down. You just reduce it from 10% each one of them to 5%. That saved them 10%. But then when it came up, you know, shall we increase the contribution that the church has to send in from 5% to 10%? Oh, most of them said yes, and I would have too.
All right, Edward. We're going to move on, Edward. We've got a show we're trying to do.
bless you, bless you, bless you.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank you.
All right, we like calls from Edward, but we got to stay more on our topics, Edward. I'm sitting here trying to breaking news. Molly Tidbett's case, illegal charged immigrant. What about we got another immigrant case murder? Can we not just say let's build this wall and get it over with? Would that be an easy thing?
Would that have stopped this person?
Yes.
How do you know?
He wouldn't be here. He was in the country illegally, Franklin. If we had a better...
I'm not defending this person,
say,
obviously.
No one can say
That's
for
right.
sure, but the idea that we don't want to increase security when things... And by the way, the media immediately tried to link this to the president.
How?
Well, one of the reporters in the Washington press pool tweeted out that coming to the next Trump rally will be this chant about this case. Now, he immediately got slammed and said, you are politicizing this, you're disgusting, and he said, oh, well, sorry, I was just making the point that this illustrates a point the president has made. But it does illustrate a point the president has made.
Let me ask everybody in this room, do we need to build a wall and let's try to get these immigrants in here legally, or at least on some type of a visa program?
By the way, that they also jumped the shark on that. They stopped a immigrant taking his wife to the hospital for a cesarean delivery, and the media jumped all over it. Oh, this was horrible and all. Turns out the guy's wanted for murder in Mexico.
What do you think, Franklin? Should we build a wall?
I think that it would be relatively easy to come up with a deal that both sides could support but for the fact that, frankly, the Republican Party is scared to death of their base if they do the deal.
You're wrong. We've already made a deal.
Yeah.
President Trump actually offered more than Obama ever offered, and not a single
President Trump
Democrat
was
took it.
offered a blank check.
Franklin,
to build
he
his
offered
wall.
it first, and
He
your
was
people
offered
turned
a
him
blank
down.
check if he just passed the DACA bill.
He offered
And
citizenship for $1.8 million.
And before they got back to Capitol Hill, after he talked to his advisors, they pulled out the rug out.
Franklin, he
That's a
offered
fact.
citizenship
You know it's
for
true.
$1.8 million.
He could have
and
his
Chuck
wall right
Schumer
now.
wouldn't
Franklin,
take it up.
Why do we want illegals in our country?
Because there are tons and tons of American businesses who utilize them for labor because they can't get
Then
people
let's
to-
make it legal. Let's find a way to
That's
change
what I
our
just
immigration.
said, John.
Franklin,
That's what I
you've
just
offered
said.
that for years.
No, you haven't.
Actually, there's all kinds of stories in D.C. about the Democrat Party doesn't want to
John.
fix this because it's too valuable at
John.
the poll.
When George W. Bush, you remember him, he was a Republican as last I recall, said we needed to do comprehensive immigration reform, it wasn't the Democrats who said no, it was the Republicans.
And what did Obama do when he had both
'Cause what
houses
did
of
y'all
Congress
say?
in 2008? What did he do for 2 years?
Try.
Did he? No, he didn't try.
Couldn't get
He didn't
60
even
votes in the Senate,
Franklin,
John.
He didn't even put anything forward.
Couldn't
The
get
Democrat
60
Party
votes.
had every branch of government and did absolutely nothing
Didn't have 60
for the,
votes, did they?
illegal immigrants.
Didn't have 60
they didn't
votes,
do
did they?
anything for any of that.
Can't pass it unless you get 60 in the Senate.
Franklin,
That's
they
a
didn't
fact.
even try. They didn't even put a bill forward.
Do you think the Democrats would like us to make this a sanctuary country?
Yes, they would.
No.
Well, they want all these sanctuary cities, so what's the difference?
Look, if you get a comprehensive bill done, that problem will be solved.
You mean like the Philadelphia guy they let loose and now he's been
Look,
arrested for murdering
We do
a
all
child?
kinds of stupid stuff.
I agree. Y'all do.
Letting an illegal alien loose who then murders a child is not stupid stuff. And by the way, we've told you all for years now that that's what this leads to. So once again, we're right, and on the back end, you all go,
John,
well, you know, every now and then
This
a
is
few
the
bad
Republican
things happen.
strategy. We create the conditions that bring about the result we want to complain about.
The sanctuary country?
Sure, that's what's happening.
Sanctuary country?
Well, no, but that's what's going to happen if you keep down the road you're going on now.
So in other words, if we don't do what they want, they're going to do that to us.
Here's what
That's
I'm
what
saying.
he just said.
All
If
the
we don't
darn
give you what
Republicans out
you
there,
want, you're
all
going to break
the
us.
Republicans who are hiring these people, okay?
They want these people to keep coming.
And you know
so
what?
instead of creating a system where you can do it legally, you keep sticking your head in the sand and going, we can't
Those are
do
the
that.
same people that are mad at President Trump, Franklin.
No,
they're supporting you guys. They're not supporting us. And while we're on the topic of bad decisions that lead to things we don't want, I never can say her name, but Alexandria Cortez is, the socialist, the future of the Democrat Party. She supports raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Well, apparently, the former employer of her, a coffee shop, has had to close down. They've gone out of business. This is the actual statement from the owner. The times have changed in our industry. The rents are very high, and now the minimum wage is going up, and we have a huge number of employees. So they're closing because of the minimum wage. She goes by and actually puts this out. The restaurant I used to work at is closing its doors. I swung by today to say hi to the last time and to kid around with friends like old times. I'm a normal working person who chose to run for office because I believe we can have a better future. You can do it too. We all can. Her own policies caused the employer to go out of business, and she's too dense to make the connection.
Dum-da-dum-dum.
You mentioned this poor girl in Iowa who got murdered. It's a horrible tragedy. But guess what? Yes, this is an illegal immigrant working on a farm in Iowa, by the way, owned by Republicans, interestingly enough.
Well,
do you think because they need labor to do it, and they can't find other people to do it. So there needs to be some system.
Why don't we prosecute the farmer that hired him?
You know what? That's really the argument.
Trump has increased
That's really
that.
the argument I've made.
Actually,
all along.
Trump has been doing that.
I don't really understand the concept of demonizing everybody who just wants to work, as opposed to the people who are trafficking.
Are you sure that farmer didn't have him here through a visa program?
Franklin, the Trump administration has actually increased those prosecutions. Are you listening?
I know. He is.
It wouldn't be illegal.
Franklin, the Trump administration has actually increased those prosecutions over what the Obama administration was doing.
Increased it.
But let's
they are prosecuting more. And guess what? The U.S. Chamber of Commerce didn't want Trump for that very reason. So these same people you're claiming, oh, the Republicans, they actually are doing what you're saying, and Trump has actually been against it and worked against it.
Well, let's take a good look at just one city, one sanctuary city, Chicago, and take a look. The people there are actually revolting against Rahm Emanuel. They want him out because of the results there.
60,
look at all the murder
68 shootings this week or something?
Yeah, I mean,
how many deaths they have this week? I have quite a few.
They had more people killed in Chicago when we were actually in the surge in Afghanistan and Iraq. More people killed there than were killed on the battlefield.
What do you think ought to be done about Chicago's crime problems?
Well, Chicago's crime problems, to a large extent, mirror what we see in some other places. The vast majority of it takes place in relatively small parts of the city. That doesn't make it less important by any means, but that's the reality of it. So the question is, how do you focus on those areas?
But now,
where gangs hide out, where gangs are?
Yes, but a more common denominator, the most common denominator, is they all happen in cities run by Democrats under complete Democratic rule with liberal policies. Yeah. That's the most common denominator of that.
It does. I understand that.
Which liberal policy is that?
It's the policing policies, Franklin. It's where they don't support their police. They don't allow their, like the stop and frisk thing. That was hugely effective in New York City, and we've abandoned it.
Turns out not, because the rate has continued to fall in New York after they abandoned it.
Because they got it under control, Franklin. It'll, if you keep on with holding the police back, New York City will fall back into the same place. Chicago is way ahead of the curve with this, and you see what their homicide rates and their shooting rates have done.
And the strict gun control hasn't helped at all.
You can't argue that. Every major violent city in the country is run by decades of Democrat leadership.
If you can easily get guns in Indiana and Wisconsin and Iowa all around your city, it doesn't really matter what you're.
So in other words, take everybody's gun.
I didn't say that at all. I just said
that's the implication of what you're saying. And by the way, while you're on that, London has banned guns, didn't work. Banned knives, didn't work. The mayor has now said we're going to ban cars because the terrorist attack used a car. They can't figure out that inanimate objects don't do this thing. Evil people do these things. While we're on that, American couple.
Well, by all means, let's put dynamite in Walmart too. Then
Do you think
that's how reasonable you Democrats are?
Do you
That's
think
where you go?
That's
how reasonable you all are.
Can I say one thing? You think if we put a few more ICE agents in Chicago that it might help clean up some of that problem there?
Well, look, the Democrats are going to abolish ICE.
Evidence that the crime rate in Chicago is being driven by immigration.
No, it's being driven by gangs.
Okay.
Which are immigration. MS-13 is an immigration problem.
MS-13 is rumored to have as many as 10,000 people nationwide.
How many's in Chicago or one?
Well, frankly, how many people can one MS-13 guy shoot
I don't
tonight?
know, but they haven't been
10,
linked to
12,
all this,
15,
these murders,
20?
which, by the way, is still historically lower than it was 30 years ago. We all say it was the good old days.
This is typical of the young Democrat Party. This couple, American couple, one of them worked for the Department of Housing and Urban Development. The other one worked at Georgetown University. They both quit their jobs to go on a year-long bike trip around the world because they believe, now this is his actual statement, you watch the news and you read the papers and you're led to believe that the world is a big, scary place. People, the narrative goes, are not to be trusted. People are bad. People are evil. People are axe murderers and monsters and worse. I don't buy it. Evil is a make-believe concept we've invented to deal with the complexities of fellow humans holding values and beliefs and perspectives different from our own. Well, guess what, Franklin? They're biking through Afghanistan, and a group of ISIS people ran them off the road and stabbed them to death. That's reality hitting a liberal perspective.
Okay.
What about the Nazi camp guard, 95, being deported back to Germany?
Two administrations weren't able to figure out how to do that. Trump got it done. The last Nazi in the country.
Wait, you mean the
Bush
Department of
and
Justice
Obama.
run by Trump?
Bush and Obama. No, actually, it was a diplomatic problem, Franklin, because Germany argued he was a Pole instead of a German. And Trump, through negotiations, which, by the way, headed by the first openly gay ambassador appointed by a president, which your side opposed, Grindel in Germany got the Germans to agree to take him, when Obama's administration and George Bush's administration couldn't.
They've been dealing with him since 1993.
Right.
And
Trump got him deported.
Where's the beef?
Here's another interesting.
The only problem is the man's 95 years old.
Well, you know what kind of deal with the devil did he have to make?
Oh, I know.
And what kind of hell's awaiting him?
I know.
By the way, this is interesting, and Franklin and I, we ought to be able to kind of both be in the middle of this. You know, the woman, Asia Argento, who was one of the lead accusers of Harvey Weinstein, and if what she says is correct, Weinstein raped her, physically raped her. She's now been accused of sexual assault. Yeah. A 17-year-old came forward and said that she got him to a hotel, asked his family if they could be alone, and she did almost exactly what Harvey Weinstein did to her. He was 17, she was 37. She's paid him off. She paid him almost $400,000, which apparently he took the money and didn't keep his mouth shut. But the pair often referred to each other as mother and son in interviews because he had played her son in a movie years ago.
And if that's true, she should be prosecuted.
But that's one of the problems with all of this movement. She was victimized, but she's victimized as well, other people.
If that's true, she should be prosecuted.
But
it's not complicated.
Well, Franklin, my point is a lot of this is really shaky ground. For example, a lot of these girls go to the directors, and some of the women said this, and they were attacked for saying it. They said a lot of them play on their sexuality, and then later they look back on it as a star, like Gwyneth Paltrow, for example. She never said a word. She was probably one of the closest people to Harvey Weinstein. She got Oscars. She got all kinds of roles out of it. Then after this pops up, she goes, oh, yes, I was victimized. This is a really complex issue.
And I think it stems from the arrogance. There's a lot of liberalism in Hollywood. And take a look, even in the TV side of things, Matt Lauer is another good example, where he was victimizing all the women that were working over there. there's a lot of this going on, and nobody's doing anything about it. It's just happening.
Let me ask you,
He's getting what he deserves.
But Frank, let me ask you a question about that while we're on that topic. The Hollywood City Council has voted to have Donald Trump's star removed because he's abusive to women. But Bill Cosby's star is still there. Brett Ratner's star is still there. Kevin Spacey's star is still there. Why is that?
They keep,
Don't know. They
keep tearing Trump's star up.
No, but that's separate. They said he didn't deserve the star anymore because of his treatment of women and minorities and all this. But yet you've got people who actually are accused of rape, and their stars are still there.
All right, this is something y'all probably can agree to. Bredesen, tariffs are not good for Tennessee. Let's talk about tariffs a little bit. I know you're not a big opponent of tariffs.
I don't like tariffs.
You're not. You don't
Marsha
like
Blackburn doesn't like tariffs.
Nope. You like tariffs?
Only certain tariffs do I like.
All right, let's talk about tariffs you like.
Well, I think what's going on is a little bit misrepresentative of the entire tactic. I think what Trump's doing is a couple of things. I think he has a different style of negotiation, and I think what he's doing is he's throwing out some, I guess
he's letting them know that we've been overcharged.
Yeah, he's throwing out the gauntlet to the Chinese and saying, look, you know, y'all export about 20% of your goods in the country of China, whereas we're only export 12%. You need us. You need us for a variety of reasons. And take a look at what's happening. The Chinese stock market has gone down substantially. Look at what's happening in Turkey.
Well, and the meetings that are coming up with China requested the meetings. We didn't request them.
Trump sees China trade as a war he can win. With China's economy cooling, President Trump said his aides are voted on the hardline tariff strategy, and they will be increasingly believed is jamming President Jinping, whatever. Anyway, he thinks he can win this trade war with China, and I think he's already brought a lot of money into the United States by just negotiating.
Well, I mean, the question is he a believer in tariffs, or is he simply using tariffs as a negotiating tactic?
I think the latter.
And if that's the case, what I would say to you is that would be a perfectly logical strategy, at least. But then why would you pick a fight with all the other Asian countries around it when you had an opportunity to bring them into the fold and put them on your side in your fight against China? Instead, you've sent that into chaos and made them much more likely to turn toward China. It doesn't make any sense.
I think Trump's playing a three-dimensional chess game here because there's a lot of different pieces here. He needs China for North Korea. He needs China to do the
Franklin, that very strategy actually worked in North America because he went after Canada. Canada pitched a big fit, and then Canada turned around. Mexico both turned around, and we're renegotiating.
With all due respect, we don't have a deal with either one of them.
But we're renegotiating.
Yes, and the deadline's supposed to be this week, and from what I've seen, we're not anywhere close to it.
Well, let me ask you something.
Well, I'm sure you've seen a lot from Canada.
And we're negotiating with them separately now, which gets rid of the whole idea of a regional trade alliance.
Which government is contacting you? The Canadian government, the Mexican government, or the U.S. government with your information from what you've seen in Cleveland, Tennessee?
Well, every economic publication that I look at, like Forbes or The Economist, those are all not liberal publications, and that's what they're reporting.
Actually, The Economist is liberal.
What about Forbes? Is it liberal?
Forbes is not terrible,
okay.
But The
they're
Economist
reporting
is.
the same thing, so maybe there's a garnet of truth in what I just said.
But I think Trump's strategy is to put the media into hysteria, and then what happens is they blow it up. He gets all the attention, and everybody in these other countries actually believe this is what he intends to do. They come back with concessions, and he gets what he wants.
Is it in the media when it's Tennessee Industries that are giving the statements saying you're hurting us? That's not the media.
Well, Franklin, the point is the same thing I said earlier. He didn't put us in a trade war. We've been in a trade war. We've just been losing the trade war. And you're right. These industries are hurt now, but they're hurt because they had adjusted to the losing. He's tired of us losing, and it may be tough for a little while.
Actually, the reality is that in these trade agreements that we're talking about, there are industries who did well for us, and there are ones who didn't do so well. And what he's doing is changing who's going to be the winner and who's going to be the loser. Now, the ones who were winning previously are squawking about it.
Well, I think he's got a good point about national security, because right now, look at our steel production in the country. It was virtually nil. We didn't have a lot going on. And what happens in wartime if we have to import our steel from all these other countries? What's going to happen to us? We'll have to retool everything and try and put it together, and we won't be able to address the enemies that are of the United States, because we don't have the capability to produce what we need to. That's what he's trying to do, is bring steel back to us, bring a lot of the different things back to us. We've been getting killed on a lot of these things that John mentioned, soybean and all of the exports that we've been trying to do. We've been getting killed with the tariffs over in the European Union and other places. So I think he's just trying to equalize the playing field.
I think Trump is waking America up and letting them see how bad this country's been run in the past by Republicans and Democrats. I think these guys in Washington are sitting around there going out for lunch, going out for dinner, being entertained by all the lobbyists in this world, and not getting a single thing done unless they get something in return.
Well, I don't know that anybody would argue with that statement, Steve.
Well, good. We've agreed to something. John wanted me to talk about Obama, praised South African president who is stealing farmland from whites.
There's some really bad stuff going on in South Africa. The president down there, they are actually taking farms from white landowners, and right now they're paying 1/10 the value of the farm. But the African National Congress is actually trying to change the Constitution where they can take the land with absolutely no compensation. And Obama went there, I'm sure was paid to speak, praised the South African president as a model and a wonderful leader in all that he was doing. Well, here's the worst part about it. They were actually asked about genocide, because a lot of white farmers are actually being murdered. And the government actually put a statement out saying, we are not considering white genocide at the moment. At the moment. And Obama went to the country and praised the president as let me see, Obama began his remarks by thanking the president for, quote, inspiring great hope in this country. People are being murdered for the color of their skin, and Obama, the supposed, civil rights icon, goes and praises the man that is trying to actually write racial discrimination into the South African Constitution.
Mm-hmm. We're about out of time. I want to ask, talk about one quick thing. Facebook says it's uncovered some more Russian meddling in the 2018
They think most of it was Iranian, and some of it was Russian, and they don't know if they're connected or not.
What I think they found out is that they can keep America tore up on the internet.
Well, that's the whole point of it. That's the whole point of the meddling.
To keep America,
to divide us.
The bulk of the meddling has actually been
the Russian investigation was from the Russian meddling, so they would divide it.
Well, first of all,
and they did a good job of dividing.
They did.
They did a great job of dividing us.
First of all,
did they do a good job of dividing us?
Mueller's authority is not limited to collusion. It's got to do with interference in the election process. That's a big part of it.
So,
and you guys keep wanting to shut it down, but that's part of the investigation that's been done.
Did Hillary Clinton do anything to create any kind of problems with this election?
I don't know the answer to that question, but I would hope if the investigation happens, we should find that out.
Well, if
the dossier started under Republicans, you forget that.
No, it started under Hillary.
No, it started. He was initially hired by the Republican National Committee. That's the truth.
Franklin, you say that every time. I'm going to say this one more time. They were hired to find dirt. You're right. But they were not employing Christopher Steele. They had absolutely nothing to do with
Fusion GPS.
They hired Fusion GPS.
That's right.
You're right, to do opposition research.
That's right.
Not just on Trump or on Hillary, on a lot of people. But the Democrats, when the primary was over, the RNC dropped it. Christopher Steele was not involved at all when the RNC was at the helm. when the Democrats took over, that's when they hired Christopher Steele. That's when he made contacts with Russian intelligence operatives, and that was fully paid for by the DNC. Actually, we do know that. We absolutely do know that. It's in sworn testimony entered.
Which you haven't read.
Well, the New York Post and Washington Post have both tied the dossier to senior Democratic leadership as well as the Clinton campaign.
They paid
There
for it.
is no doubt about it.
I didn't argue that point. It's just the idea that there was some kind of fix-in on the front of it, which is ludicrous.
Frankly,
you don't have any evidence to support
Bruce Orr
that.
wasn't
None.
even. Bruce Orr had no reason to be even involved, and his wife worked for Fusion GPS. He was ferrying stuff back and forth between Fusion GPS and the FBI. We know that John Brennan smuggled the information to Harry Reid, who then put it out. Frankly, this is a disaster as far as the American.
And none of it has anything to do with what this president
We're really running
the ball that was out to get Donald Trump.
We're really running a little bit late. I've got to end this show, but I want to say again, if you haven't tuned in lately, I have given both John and Franklin a copy of the book, the best-selling book, The Russian Hoax. Now, Franklin said he would read it, and we'll come back and we'll be talking about the Russian hoax a little bit, because basically what it does, it puts this whole investigation in perspective, in order of how things have happened, and I hope that you'll be able to talk with us about how this thing came down after this.
By the way, that cartoon behind my head here today, he's really got big hands, doesn't he?
Keep on trumping. See you next week. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson, John Stanberry, and Franklin Chan.